Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to install Docker on Windows 11. So I'm going to start with a completely blank slate. So typically people are going to have you turn Windows features on that you need for Docker. I believe the modern Docker desktop installation will help work you through those issues. So one of those things that you're going to need is either Hyper-V, or the preferred version in my opinion is Windows Subsystem for Linux, is the what they call the back end of Docker, how it's going to run on your computer on Windows. So that's going to need to be enabled, and you're also going to need I think you're going to need the virtual machine platform as well. And a key aspect of this is because Docker is essentially like running little virtual machines in a way on your computer, you do need to have virtualization available. And that's not something that is purely software based. That is something that goes to the level of your CPU processor, like stats basically. So I'm going to open the task manager and navigate to the performance tab, which is the one where you see all those graphs of what your computer is doing. And if you look right here under virtualization, you see enabled. And so some CPUs won't support virtualization, and some will have it available but not enabled. So you'll actually have to boot your computer, use a special key on your keyboard to get into the BIOS or the UEFI interface of your computer and turn on that virtualization before you even get to your operating system. So that's probably going to be a prerequisite that Docker is going to point out if you don't meet that requirement. So if I search for Docker, Docker gives products, they sell products, and you can have accounts with them, but you don't actually need that to run Docker containers. So I'm just going to download the standard Windows installer. And for Linux, you can install just the Docker engine, meaning kind of just the command line part of it, and the parts that you can't see, the parts that you don't point and click with. But I believe for Windows, you have to install Docker Desktop. So there's no headless version of Docker, at least not prominently advertised for Windows. And I think the same might be true for Mac as well. So you're going to need to install Docker Desktop. Now, just because you install Docker Desktop doesn't mean you need to sign in with Docker services. Now, if you're wanting to take your own Docker containers and publish them to container repositories, that's a different story. You may need to do some sort of login or authenticate with your container repository, but that's not something I tend to do because I'm not publishing a lot of Docker containers. I'm generally just using a lot of Docker containers. Most of these are going to be available publicly for free. No sort of authentication required, like you might have with, say, a private GitHub repository. Alright, finally. I don't need it. Alright, so finally this succeeded. Maybe I'll be able to cut out some of that waiting time for you, but this is going to be the part 1 of 2 because Docker needs to restart Windows to complete the installation.